Sherburne Public Library's Book Talk. This week we are talking about women authors. There's so many to choose from, so I'll get started. I'm going to start with Isabel Allende. She is written a new book recently. It's a nonfiction called The Soul of a Woman. It's a really, really good book. But just to give you a little bit about her, she was born in Peru in 1942, I believe. Her father left when she was really young, and left her mom with 3 children. And they eventually moved to Chile, and they lived there for a while. So she calls herself a feminist from when she was in kindergarten, and it talks about that in this book. She says, "When I say I was a feminist in kindergarten, I'm not exaggerating." She said, as a child, she watched her mother, abandoned by her husband, provide for 3 small children without resources or voice. So Isabel became a fierce and defiant little girl, determined to fight for the life her mother couldn't have. So it's really interesting because, of course, she grew up, she kind of came of age in the 60s when things were starting to move a little for the women's movement. So she was right on those tails, riding that with a lot of the women of that time. So she was a really interesting person, I found. The book I love in the sense that it really gives, it's very personal, it's very short. I mean, literally, it's 175 pages. But it's her voice and her talking about her journey through life and how she navigated the changes that have happened for women over the years. So it's, for me, and other women of a certain age, it's really interesting to see because you can really relate to her experiences, where you see that things are not right and you want to change them. And then you see how things do change a little, but you see how much it takes to make that happen and what a struggle it is and what obviously still going on, as we all know. So I love it for that reason. For me personally, like I said, because women of a certain age will really relate to it. But I also feel like women of younger ages, perhaps like my guests or host here, because it gives you a vision into what it was really like for her in those times and why women feel the way they do about certain things and how we come to decisions and how we make our way through this journey of trying to, fight for equality basically all these years. So it's I think, really relevant in that sense. I have to admit, I have not read her books, and I feel bad about that because I believe just reading the way she writes very beautifully. And I just like her voice so much. I'm really looking forward to reading some of her books. She's best known for The House of Spirits and City of the Beasts. Those are some of her earlier ones. And in 2010, she received Chile's National Literature Prize, and President Obama awarded her the 2014 Presidential Medal of Freedom. So she's a really great person, really interesting person. And I would highly recommend reading this. I mean, it's really an easy read, so anybody could read it in a day easily, even me who reads slowly. So, so that's my little review.
I was just going to say, Isabel Allende is probably one of my new favorites, specifically because of the book, The House of Spirits, because I'm really into, like, what's the word? Magical realism, kind of, that, he wrote Love in the Time of Cholera. Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yes.
Who does a lot of magical realism, magical surrealism and stuff like that. And Isabel Allende is very similar. And that book is mostly about like witches and witchy kind of stuff. And I love that stuff. And she's also just a wonderful writer. Like her prose are absolutely amazing and everything flows and it just her writing style pulls you in. And it's so good. And she's also, like you said, she's just a really amazing human being. I actually didn't know that she was awarded the Presidential Peace Prize. Is that what that award is called?
I think that was what it was called. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I didn't know that about her. So you learn something new every day.
Oh, Medal of Freedom. I'm sorry. Medal of
Oh, Medal
Freedom.
of Freedom.
Yes.
I think that's probably what you said, but my brain
I know.
messed it up.
Yeah, that's why I had to look it up. I was like, I got to get it right. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I look forward to reading her books because I feel, I don't know, especially after reading this, I feel like a real connection with her in a weird way. You know how you do with connect with certain authors people in the spotlight. And so I just feel like I would really enjoy her books now. I don't know. So
yeah. Now I feel like I should read that book because I haven't read it yet. I've been seeing it on the news shelf and I know I should read it. And Kathleen told me when it came in, she was like, hey, the new Isabel Allende biography is in. And I was like, oh, I have too many things to read. But now I feel like I really should read it because it tells her story and stuff like that. And I feel like it would augment my enjoyment of her writing as well. So
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I recommend. So who's going next? I think Marie is going next. Yeah.
I am. So the author that I chose for today's book talk is one of my new favorites as well, besides Isabel Allende, Natasha Nyan. Natasha Nyan is the writer of a newer series of fantasy LGBTQ fiction, which, if you know, I feel like I talk about this every book talk. This is what I read. That's all I read. I feel like the Girls of Paper and Fire series is what she has written. There are 2 books out. There's the first one, which is The Girls of Paper and Fire, and the second one, The Girls of Storm and Shadow. And a third one is coming out soon. So I'm so excited about that. Natasha Nyan just tweeted about it a few days ago that the third one is in editing process and is coming out soon. She's not making us wait long for it either because this book came out in 2019. So she's not making us wait very long for it. She must be busy during the pandemic with her writing stuff, which why not? Take advantage of it. But first, I just want to talk about a little bit who she is, because who she is as a person very much informs these books, which I love. Natasha Nyan is she's a writer and a yoga teacher, which I think is really cool. Yoga, so much fun. She grew up between Malaysia and the UK, going back and forth, because she is a she's a daughter of divorce, I believe. And the Chinese side of her family is from Malaysia, of course. And then her other side of the family is from the UK. And one of the things that I love that's on her website about her is she mentions that the multicultural upbringing continues to influence her writing, and she's passionate about bringing diverse stories to teens. And that's something that I'm so passionate about. I love that stuff. So when I first heard about these books from a friend of mine, her name is Emily, because we were doing I made a TikTok months and months ago, over the summer, about my favorite gay fiction, gay YA fiction and stuff like that. And my friend Emily saw it and she texted me and was like, hey, want to do a book swap? And she lives in Buffalo, which is near where my grandma lives. So what we did was, during the pandemic, we did it safely. We cleaned our books, and I dropped my books off in her mailbox, and she left her books out for me on her porch. And this is one of the books that she gave me. These are not her copies. I have my own copies now, but because I read them and gave them back to her. But so this is one of those things that it's going to be good when somebody recommends it to you. And especially somebody as picky as my friend Emily is about what they read and that sort of thing. This book is about a girl named Lay who lives in a world of 3 different castes of beings, basically. So the castes are the paper castes, which are the humans, the steel caste, which are the half human, half demons, basically. And then there's the moon caste, which are the full demons. And usually the full demons have magical powers. So the place where she's living is currently being ruled by a moon caste king, who has like the demon shape of like a bull type deal. So he still looks human-ish, but like with bull features, I guess. Like for anybody who plays Dungeons and Dragons, he's kind of a furbolg, if you know what that is. And so he's like taken over, and what he does is he collects what are called paper girls like every year, and they are humans who are selected to be his concubines for the year, basically. And Lay was not originally even in the running to be a paper girl, but one of his generals, when they were raiding her village, saw her, and she has bright golden eyes, which are very unusual for a paper caste person. So they were just intrigued by that they were thinking that she must have magic in her blood somehow. Which we know is probably, like, at least in the first book, is not necessarily true, because both of her parents were paper cast, and the only connection she has to any demon anything is like her governess is steel cast. But that's it. Like she doesn't really have any moon cast lineage. So she gets taken to the castle and she gets trained to be the Demon King's concubine, basically. And that's mostly what this book is about. However, Natasha Nyan throws an awesome thing in where instead of the main romance being between, girls fighting over the spot for head concubine or whatever, Lay falls in love with one of the other paper girls named Ren, who is tall and very regal, and everybody ends up thinking, because she is also from a very high noble family, that she is going to obviously be the Demon King's favorite. But Ren ends up returning Lay's feelings, and then it just goes into this whole wonderful love story of forbidden romance. And I feel like this is a new trend that I love that is happening, that is forbidden romances between lesbians. I love it so much. So when Em told me that was the premise of this book, I jumped right on it. But this book is really, really wonderful. Natasha Nyan has a wonderful writing style, actually a lot like Isabel Allende. And this book is told all in first person. It's told from Lay's perspective, except for one chapter, which is the Demon King's chapter. And that's what's interesting, is that's the last like little prologue or epilogue chapter is the Demon King. And then the prologue of the second book picks back up in the Demon King's narrative. So it's so cool. It's such a cool way that she sort of weaves those together. So yeah, that's who I talked about today. She's so cool, and the books are so good, and I'm so excited for the third one to come out. So
it sounds great, honestly. I mean, who doesn't love epic romance? I mean,
I do love a good LGBTQ relationship in a YA book, because it's not very common.
It's getting more and more common, though, I feel like.
Yes, it is, definitely.
We have a lot of LGBTQ books in our, especially new books in our collection, which is great. I'm so glad to see that. I'm just glad that it's becoming more of a mainstream, I don't want to call it that, but you know what I mean, more accepted and more easily, gotten by everyone. So.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember even just like a few years ago when I was looking for those sorts of stories, like when I first came out in like high school, it was very hard. Like I was stuck with like 3 or 4 books. Annie on My Mind was one of them, and there were like a couple of other ones, and none of them were really like these ones that are coming out now are. I wish these books had come out when I was in high school. I probably honestly would be a more well-adjusted person if they had. But like my reading list right now, I actively seek out these kind of things. Like this is all I've been reading recently are these sorts of books that are like fantasy LGBTQ, like diverse narratives and all of that sort of stuff. So I completely agree. I love that these sort of things are becoming, and I think it is okay to call it mainstream, because it's like talking about like the normalization of, instead of being heteronormative, like we're starting to go into diversity being the norm, which is awesome.
Right. Absolutely.
So
yeah, that's what I mean. So
yeah,
that's good. Yay. So I think Justine is going to talk next on her book.
All right. So the book I picked is called Finish the Fight, and it is a collaboration between Veronica Chambers and the staff of the New York Times. Veronica Chambers actually is a journalist for the New York Times, but she's written for many other magazines as well, like Oprah, Esquire. Her essays have been all over the place. She was born in Panama and she grew up in Brooklyn. So this book really focuses on women of color in history, which I really like because I didn't know who any of these women were before looking at this book. So this book was published last year to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of women getting the right to vote. Very, very exciting. It is a children's book, but I think it would be even a good read for young adults or adults. It's also short, like Colleen's book. I think it's like 130 pages maybe. And it just has really great illustrations. And I think even somewhere in this book, there's a little board game that spans across the pages that you can play. And the board game is a timeline of the women's suffrage movement. So that was really cool. Each chapter is kind of dedicated to a different, either one woman or a few women who work together to help women get the right to vote. And they're all women of color. It's just really great to see the representation that we don't really learn about in school, because I think, first of all, the women's suffrage unit is usually pretty short, and there are not any names that are really dropped. Definitely not women of color are mentioned. So I just really liked this because it kind of tied in events that we all learned about, like the Seneca Falls Convention and stuff like that, but it mixed in all these other people and things that I didn't even know happened. So I'm glad that this book is out there. And if you want to learn more about the women's suffrage movement, I definitely recommend, because I learned a lot that I probably wouldn't have known ever if I hadn't picked up this book. So there's that.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that there's a board game in it. What a cool
Yeah,
thing.
it is really fun.
So cool.
It's set up kind of like a Candyland way, where you and when you get on a spot, it'll tell you like a little fun fact about the women's suffrage movement. So
great.
Oh, that's so cool. I want to get my hands on that so badly now.
Yeah.
I've been like seeing it when I've been downstairs.
mm-hmm.
And you're totally right that when we learn about like women's suffrage in school, we learn about two people.
Yeah.
We learned about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and we learned about Susan B. Anthony, and like that's it.
That's
it.
That's really it. Like we don't really get any other names, and like you said, they're white women. They're not women of color. And I didn't start learning about the women of color who were so integral to the women's suffrage movement until I took a class specifically on that in college for a history course that I took. So this is music to my ears, what you were telling me, Justine, and I got to get my hands on that book.
Yeah. No, it's really good. For example, right in the beginning, it shows you pictures of women that you might know about that you
Uh-huh.
learned, and these are all the ones that you probably didn't.
Oh,
Wow,
that's awesome.
that's a great
It just really
illustration.
goes through. But yeah, I didn't even know these things. And also, when we say women having the right to vote, we kind of just group it all together. But
Mhm.
like, I didn't even know Chinese women didn't get the right to vote until like years after. And I
They
wouldn't
didn't.
know that
Yeah.
Mhm.
this book. So
And I seem to remember that even the women's suffrage movement in the beginning wasn't accepting of Black women in it,
They weren't.
which is disappointing. But I mean, we did make strides forward. But yeah, it's just those things you don't learn about. You just assume, like you said, all women. We must all have the right to vote now. No, that didn't happen that quickly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's great. What a good book for kids to get their hands on and learn
Oh,
Yeah,
about.
definitely.
And it's in our library. So I think all of these books are at least available in our library system. I think yours, Marie, aren't exactly in our library, but you can
Yeah.
get them through the 4-county system. And Justine's and I's are both on our shelves. So we invite you all to come in and check out some books, some women authors, or anything. Actually, we just love to have you in the library. So appreciate you listening, and we hope that we will see you at the library. Thanks.